Good afternoon. My name is Mark, and I'm here at GovDirections. We'll get started here in just a minute. Good afternoon. My name is Mark, and I'm here at GovDirections. We'll get started here in just a minute. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gov School. I want to thank you for being here this afternoon and to participating in this session that we're getting ready to have. It's called the RFP. It's actually one of my favorite sessions that I do, and it's the first one that I've set up to help our clients learn about how to work with governments. And so I want to first thank you for joining us. And second, I'd like to say that sometimes I'll stutter a little bit, so I'm going to apologize in advance. Please bear with me. But if you have any questions at all as we go through our presentation today, make sure you type them in the chat box or simply raise your hand, technically speaking, and I'll stop and try to call on you. This is a live session on YouTube, so please be aware for privacy reasons. That means it's being recorded and people will be able to watch it a little bit later. We like to try to fit around everyone's schedule. So we want to thank you for joining us. The primary goal of today, and I'm going to go back and forth here as we let individuals into the actual room. They're on both sides of the video today, but we want to walk through an RFP. And I always like to actually use a real live RFP when I do this. I'm going to bounce around from the web to the PowerPoint into the actual documents. And so if at any point in time you don't see a screen that I think I'm referencing, please let me know so that I can stop and make sure that you are seeing that. In addition, if we do have any audio concerns, if you're live here on Zoom, know that we'll be reopening the room and we'll just stay there. We'll come right back to you. Just kind of sort of the ground rules there. It is helpful though that you maintain your mute status when you're on Zoom. We are going to really talk about the structure of a request for proposal. Before you actually learn how to respond to one, you really I think you need to understand how it works. That's sort of the approach that I take. And so what I always try to encourage you to do is to go through and really read some that are in your individual industry. And I think that you'll find that those are helpful to use as a reference as you move forward in working with government, and then even potentially follow along and see what some other companies may have responded. Generally, this online, so that you should be able to see that that information there for you somewhere in the actual process of going through the RFP award stage. As I'm going to give you some quotes that I like. One of my favorites is supposed to be hard. If it were easy, everyone would do it. I try to approach everything in life that way. And, if it was, the things that are easy or some of the things you just let go. I always try to focus on some of those things that appear, may seem initially to be hard. But this here quote's from Tom Hanks. He's from A League of Their Own, and it's about softball. So I think we all enjoy playing softball, but if you want to be a professional at softball, it's not easy. And so just remember that heading into government contracting as well. And knowing that a lot of individuals will see the information and then they'll shy away from it. Hopefully, when we leave this conversation today, you will not be one of those individuals. You'll understand that there's a lot of governmentese, but you will come to know where to focus in at, what to actually look for, and then just recognize that when you're in a public environment, you're working with a public sector organization, they have got a lot of rules that they typically have in place, and they want to make sure they meet those, and they don't deviate from those rules at all. And so that's why sometimes it can look a little bit concern some individuals, but at the end of the day, it really should not. Contracting instruments in general, you're going to hear these terminology as I bounce around today, but here are the primary types that you will see out there. The first is the initial request for information. That is the government is actually just seeking to learn who is in this field, or that they're providing the supply, the service that they offer. If you see one of these, or have your capability statement ready to go. I mean, they're wanting to potentially engage with you. Sometimes these are referred to as, you see here, the source of salt. Essentially, they're looking to see who's able to provide that product that they're seeking. Sometimes they will even go straight from that stage of request to the actual contracting. And so be aware of that. So they don't ever just ignore those. And once again, have that capability statement ready to go. In fact, if I leave you with nothing else today, is you need to get that capability statement in hand. That's a one-page document. I've got some sessions on here that help you, or you can give somebody on our staff a call and they'll help you lay one of those out for your company. But having it ready to go is really important. Request for qualifications, you'll see that terminology, RFQ, not to be confused with request for quotes. But qualifications, this is typically in specific industries where they're looking at someone based on some sort of level of expertise. For example, engineers or architects or lawyers or legal field, maybe even types of contractors and electricians, making sure you're certified, that you have an industry-based qualification in place, and they want to go ahead and get you lined up so that whenever they do have a bid completed or they're going to procure from those qualifications, that they're comparing apple to apple. Those who are qualified are all in the equal playing field. Oftentimes, these types of documents are not contracting instruments or put in place by the industry sector themselves. You know, the unions have lobbied for that to make sure that's the case, because that are their organizations, professional organizations, and it's simply because they want to be held to higher standards against each other. The invitation to quote, somewhat less formal there. You traditionally see a government in the process of, something everyone recognizes whenever they say this is what we're looking to buy, that everyone who's willing to bid on it knows exactly what they're talking about. Maybe 10 tires, for example, and they have the size of those tires, or even going in pest control for a 1,000 square foot building. The standards are traditional, and everyone knows what it is whenever it's laid out, and they can give that government a quick quote. The invitation to bid or request for bids, sometimes ITB, RFP, come to learn these acronyms now. They're helpful to know that whenever you're going into it. But these are traditionally situations where government knows exactly what they want. The bid specs are there. You should be able to respond to those bid specs. Maybe your product can deviate from that just a little bit, but generally you're able to provide the service, not necessarily a name brand, but close to it. And have that there for you to bid on. They're going to lay it out, and maybe you're going to bid on a per hour basis, or you're going to bid on a per unit basis of some sort, or some sort of quantity-based measurement. And you'll see those very straightforward in their approach. And then you have my favorite there, the request for proposal, and that's what we're going to focus on today. But RFPs, the primary, I think, contracting instrument with governments that are looking for some sort of service provision or a supply even, or a goal that they're trying to achieve. And so, and that's sort of what defines that. This government knows they've been given an assignment by a decision-making body. The elected individuals potentially are appointed, and they're trying to accomplish an objective. For example, I've always worked in the compensation management field. I've worked over 30 years. I've worked on about 350 different projects for states. But each one of those, the government basically comes in and said, we want to make sure our wage structure is competitive. Now we're looking to the industry to tell us, how do you determine that? Okay. And so I have a methodology for doing that. And my competitors have the same sort of methodology. I can come back and say, here is my proposal to help you accomplish your objective to make sure your compensation structure is competitive, or potentially, that somehow that American Rescue Plan funds are being awarded and spent correctly, or there could be all kinds of different reasons. But they're looking for the subject matter experts, me or you, to come to them and say, here is how we're going to accomplish this goal together. And the government itself is going to lay out a request for that, and so that they can try to get the same type of information back from the businesses that want to respond, that can provide their services, and then they can actually try to get to a level negotiated stage way of selecting someone. And so that's the RFP, or the request for proposal. And so formally, it is a solicitation. That means that they're actively asking you to respond to them. Okay, it's made through a bidding process. That means competitive, and they're looking to compare you against someone else. and then they're going to procure with someone, a potential supplier who provides that business proposal. It's important to understand that this is a competitive environment. So if you see one and, maybe it looks like it's been written for your competitor, the fact is, they borrow the information from others. They learn how to request in general what they're seeking. But if they go out for an RFP, it is a competitive situation. So you have just as good a shot as anyone else to win that if you follow the instructions. The second thing I want to leave with you today, the first is, have a capability statement ready to go. The second is always follow instructions when you're working with government. Okay. It is not a time to be creative. That's kind of contrary to what you would normally think as an entrepreneur. That's the way you created your company. You're there, you're ready to work with government. And that's almost always driven by a creative person, someone who's able to adjust and modify things. And you're looking to sell yourself. And in government, though, it's very straightforward. Okay. So when you pick up that RFP, you need to focus in on it, read it first, go all the way through it, and don't offer things that are not being requested. Okay. Follow their instructions first. And the reason why is the first person you're really trying to get your information by is a procurement officer. And their primary objective and their responsibility is to make sure you're following the rules of the organization. And once they check that off, yes, you did, then they're going to move you along with those others who did to the decision makers. This could be potentially, my field, an HR manager, or maybe the city council, or it could be the executives within the organization. Or if you're bidding on, recreational product, you're working with the recreation director, public works director. But they're the decision makers at that point, because the procurement officer has said, yes, this company knows how to follow instructions. They meet all of our qualifications. They meet everything. They've got this information here. Now you go and you talk with them. Maybe if you got to clarify something, you can call them up and get them to clarify that with you. Okay. So understand that process and in the role each individual plays. I have a session where it's called GovSchool Focus, which we do every second Tuesday, first and third Tuesdays. And what we do is we actually walk you through decision making in the government and how that works as part of that process. I encourage you to take that class if you haven't. Here are the traditional parts that you see in just about every RFP. And a couple of things to remember is, there is really a school of how to write RFPs. In fact, I teach a class at a graduate school and how to do that to individuals who write them, and not the response back to, they're not how do you write back to the government, but how the government actually prepares them. So they're all trained in the same way. So you'll see a traditional pattern of how they're going to ask for the information. First, there's going to be a statement of work. The statement of work is going to be clear. It's not going to be too detailed. 2 or 3 sentence statement that says this is what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. They're taught to, the ABCs. Always be not always be closing. That's what we're trying to do. No, accuracy, brevity, and clarity. Okay. So they want to make sure the information they present to you is accurate, and it's brief and it's clear and to the point. Okay. Sometimes whenever I teach them, I say, it's you don't write so people can understand. You write so people are not misunderstood. Okay. So they don't misunderstand things. It's important that it's clear. Okay. And the technical specifications, that's when they're going to lay out any specific requirements that they're going to have. And that's also going to be short to the point for you. And it should be extremely clear. They're going to give you a schedule of activities, when they want you to do whatever by whatever time. This could be, a one-time drop ship, or I'm working with a client right now and I've got a information I got to retrieve and get from information from them in order to prepare the product, the deliverable that they're looking for over the next 4 months. And I've got steps along the way that I'm going to do that. And there's potentially a payment method, or they're going to talk to me about how they're going to compensate me in that schedule. And as I have that list of deliverables spelled out, that I'm going to get back to them. If there's any contract terms and conditions, traditionally there are with government, they're going to lay those out. And when you pick up an RFP, you're going to want to, well, the first thing I want to focus in on is those things we just talked about. But then I'm going to look for that contract term. Okay. Those terms and conditions, because if I can't live with that, I need to just let it go, because governments are not going to change them. Okay. Just know that going into it. So you got to be, they're very straightforward. Okay. And almost always driven by state or local law. Okay. The ordinances of some sort. If it's not spelled out, you should be able to take the opportunity to respond back to that government with some, okay, that you can live with. Okay. So that there should be a starting point of how you're going to work together, that contract. And ultimately the contract is going to guide the entire project. They're always going to give you a format of proposal. Okay. This means that essentially they're going to tell you and everybody else how to respond back to them. Okay. Because they want to, they want section A. And when they score it, they want to be able to look at everybody that's responding and score everybody the same way. And everybody's responded back in that section A the same way. So they're going to help take all of you who are different and organize you in such a way that they can evaluate you fairly. And then they're going to tell you in the process what kind of qualifications experience they're looking for. And it's just like, when you go to hire somebody in your own company and you look and you want this qualification, you want this experience, I want the most qualified and I want the most experienced person. But at the end of the day, sometimes I can't get that. Okay. So they recognize that. So some of us that come to the table, we're brand new. And so what you have to do, though, just like if you're just coming out of college, you got to be ready to go, gearing, and or you maybe just changed industries, or you got a new level of certification and knowledge level, and you got to sell yourself. Okay, so get ready to do that, and you're doing that not only through just the traditional method that they're asking you to provide your credentials, but you're also doing that once again through that capability statement. Leaving that with you. Number one, capability statement. Okay. And then number two is, what is it? Never be creative. Okay. Always follow those instructions. And then they're going to tell you to give them a cost breakdown. They're going to explain to you how they're going to work with you. Oftentimes, this is somewhat open-ended, and they also will leave it in a separate part of the process. It's traditionally not the reason they select you. Okay. But they are going to give you some standards of how they do that traditionally. Okay. So if they want it fixed, or they want it fixed plus, or they want to cover the travel, maybe now they're even giving you, if you're doing a year or a multi-year, they're talking about indexes. We haven't done that since the 90s. I saw that routinely in the 90s. Now we probably need to include that. So the period of time they're going to evaluate that cost. And if cost does go up, then you have some adjustments. And then they're going to give you the evaluation criteria. Okay, the evaluation criteria is it's last here, but probably always some of the most important. Okay, now most of them are very vague. There's no, there's school of how to write an RFP, but there's not really a school of how to evaluate. Because what you traditionally have to do, and what they'll do is they'll include maybe a group of people within their organization. Maybe if they're looking in public works, they're going to bring the public works director, maybe even the secretary in the public works department, bringing multiple people into a room to evaluate. And so what I always tell individuals is you should take your final response back, get you a few people in a room together and let them evaluate your pitch and your proposal, and what they come up with on average, the government's going to come up with. Okay. And so that's a way to go ahead and learn how to make sure you evaluate criteria. Most of these are going to be very subjective. Okay. In the sense that they're going to ask big questions and they're going to score you in different ways. I mean, I can go in and somebody will score me a 30 and another one will give me 100 on a scale of 100. And, obviously it's not me, it's the way they're trained to evaluate, because I'm not going to have that wide spectrum of scoring. And so just know that going into it. Evaluation criteria is almost always a point system. And so it's weighted, meaning that they put emphasis on particular areas. The highest is almost always qualification experience. Okay. It's just, you see that over and over again, the ability to have a good match, your ability to work with them. Cost is almost always traditionally the lowest part of the scoring mechanism. Okay. The reason why, the main reason why is because the last thing that a government contracting officer wants to do is to be embarrassed. Okay. They don't want to hire somebody who can't perform. Okay. They can handle paying too much, paying too little. They can handle that part. That's something they can get back and say, hey, yeah, this person's great. We need to give them a little bit more money. But what they can't handle is going back to that city council, that county commission, the board, school board, and saying, I heard these folks and they just didn't make it. They just could not provide the service and supplies that we expected. That's the last thing they want. If they do that a couple of times, they won't be there that often. You have nothing to do with that. They will have to take the fall for that. So know that going into it. So don't ever undersell yourself. Don't ever put yourself in a position where you can't provide the service or supply that they're seeking. That's the most important part. Okay. But here are the typical parts of an RFP. Now, here is another favorite saver out of Coldplay song. You're the one that I wanted to find. The hardest part in government really is learning and finding that one that you really want to work. So I've got a couple of examples here, but what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to step over to the web, just kind of show you how I find things. So here we are at GovDirections, and I'm going to have an account set up, of course. My account settings are going to drive my account, and I'm going to have a daily alerts going to come to me. Most of you know how this daily alert works. You come in, it shows you those matches from the previous 24-hour period. We're going to store it online, and we're going to come to it. And if we need to online, if it's caught my spam filter, otherwise it's going to be in my email box. It's going to look and feel a little bit different in my email. It's going to be more traditional, but all of it with the ability to click and point and click within 2 clicks. And so those are the ones every day coming to me, and I'm popping through theirs. Another quick way is, I always go back just to check. I'm in the consulting organizational management field, and I might want to go in here and take a look at the different types of projects that are out there, and see which ones. And maybe an emergency preparedness. I'm working right now on a emergency preparedness contract for someone, and making sure that they've got their indirect cost allocation plan set up. And so I've got different types of projects, but go in here and see. And I think I pulled one of these out, but I wanted to make sure I get one that's relevant, because you can pop around. And so in Michigan, I think we came up with, I saw one earlier in the compliance consultant. This is big business right now. Making sure that they spend their American Rescue Plan Act money appropriately, going in. All of these are going to have the title, ability to capture the bid. I might want to mark it, come back to it a little bit later, because I want to have the ability to sit down and read through it the entire time. I can view all those captured opportunities. Just click here and see the ones I'm working. I'm always working, a good number, but not too many. Keep it clear and keep it clean. Know those indicators of success. We teach that in the class for you to know reason why you're winning, and know which ones to go after. But Kalamazoo is a great town. Interested in this project. Maybe you're not familiar with where Kalamazoo's at. You click there, see it on the geo, we'll see where it's at. It's up there in Michigan. I've been there before. In fact, been on a project there once before. And so great town. Maybe nowadays we're getting back into more, hopefully soon, more in-person meetings. Otherwise, a lot of things nowadays are being done like this on Zoom, and I can meet with them anywhere. Okay. But if this is of interest, I got the number, who to contact. Occasionally it's personal. Other times it's open. They won't, anybody can help you. That they'll put a person's name there or an email address. I'm not going to generally bother them though until I get a good handle on the project. And even then I'm going to try not to. Click through, see the actual RFP there, download. Within 2 clicks, you should be at the actual document. So here's a sample request for proposal. First thing you almost always will see is a cover letter. And this one here is a little bit unwieldy, to be honest with you. I always, when I grade the papers to make sure they're doing them correctly, some of the procurement officers, then you want to make sure that it's easy to read, easy to understand, but all the key information is on the front page. So they are accomplishing that. And so you see the address, the phone number, who they tell you to contact. If they ever give you a contact person, that's all you're going to work with. Okay, know that going into it. The title should be easy enough to remember, the reference, the due date that issued it, and then of course the due date is being accepted. You always want to make sure there it is, 3 p.m. local time. I'm not sure exactly if Kalamazoo is on Eastern time or Central time or Mountain time, so maybe I want to confirm that going into it, and so I don't ever want to get there at 3:01 and get there too late, because then that's going to be a big failure, big fat no right up front where I wasted all that time. Or I don't want to get there at 3 p.m. my time, Atlanta time, whenever 3 p.m. Kalamazoo time is different. Okay, so and that could cost me just simple errors. In addition, they want to throw out some any of the big items. I want to catch that information. So, for example, they want everything in an envelope, and they want the project name and proposal reference number. And the envelopes have to be sealed. So I've got to make sure I do that now. I can't just forget this reference number, or forget the project title, or rename it whenever they're looking for someone who can follow instructions. Okay, first. Okay. And so they're going to give you these details. And so then they're going to give me, let me know sort of the index, the table of contents and where the information is at. And so you could see some of the things we just talked about: scope of work, terms and conditions. This is more indemnity insurance and contract requirements, how to do the proposal, how they're going to award it. So you see the same things we just talked about. Instructions, okay, there. And that's the board, the proposal format. Okay. And so as you step through here, a lot of times they're going to give you some checkoff requirements, and it looks like they're scoring them as well, that you had enough time to respond, and that you need to go through and check off. Don't ever leave anything blank. If they're asking you to do something, it may seem silly. It may not be what you thought would be a part of a normal product. You need to get it to them regardless. Oftentimes they'll do things like ask you to sign something on the front page, which is here. Sometimes it's on the bottom of each page. Initial, I've seen somebody miss a multi-million-dollar contract because they forgot to sign one page, signed all the rest of them, forgot to sign one page, and it caused them to be in non-compliance. And so that you don't want to have those problems. Okay. So get somebody else to evaluate you as you walk through just those formalities. Those are important. Okay. But it's the basic stuff, go ahead and start. Yeah. Maybe go ahead and build you a Google Drive, listen to Tammy Bailey Folk. She hosts the class. It tells you how to write a response, get that Google Drive in place. She does a really good job of helping you understand how to go about doing that. But your instructions, they're going to lay them out there for you. They're going to tell you how they want to examine it. Okay. They want the sum to cover the cost of the, so they're going to tell you all the details. Okay. The preparation, how they're going to do it, explanation, cash discount, so forth. These are answers to questions that you might have. Okay. Read through it. The proposal and award is going to be it's going to be a 3-year term. Okay. Automatically this becomes a big contract. I only have to respond once, but I've got a 3-year business. These type things should go into your costing analysis. Be ready to do that. Understand the types of items as you go through. I'm going to write here maybe a little check mark and say, hey, this is going to allow me to discount my price a little bit because I know that I'm going to be able to work with it for 3 years. Okay. And kind of go through and do the details. And if there are going to be some addendums that you've actually responded back, another reason not to send your RFP off too early or your response back to them. You want to wait maybe 2 days beforehand. It's going to be in their hand the day beforehand because they could ask you to make sure you see all the addendums and that you've checked off. Okay. And that could be a reason for you to be also disqualified. Okay. You don't want to have that happen because they're going to try to get from, 20 responses to 2. Okay. And they got to get to that point. And they're looking for reasons to do that because they don't. And number one reason is no, you can't follow instructions. So follow instructions. As you step through here, you'll see the details again. They're going to have a qualifications. So here they're telling you these are the type of things we're looking for from your qualifications and experience. Okay. You probably have all this. You're going to have it in Google Drive. It's going to be laid out. You're going to know the answers to these questions. And you're going to, and it's going to here, they're going to check it off. Okay. And they're going to lay you out that way. They're going to lay you out against each other in a fair way. Okay. And now they're asking about home office. So they're adapting. Companies are adapting. It's not a big concern anymore that you don't have a physical office. That was a big requirement for a long time. Any personnel, they also want to attach your resumes, have those resumes ready to go if you have multiple people involved in your projects. And then other questions that they would have. These are all straightforward. It's nothing complicated. Everything you should know. Okay. Here's like open-ended question. And then they give you no room to answer it, really. So you have to be, let's look at here. I've got my window a little bit off there. They don't really tell me if I can attach things. So I need to find out if I can, okay, which they most likely will allow you that. And this is probably going to be your project understanding page or your methodology is an occasional response back to them that you've got spelled out on a one-pager. You want to, if they give you a little bit of latitude, you might take 2, but not too much. They got to read a bunch of these. They don't want to waste time. Don't bore them to death. Okay. Be relevant in your response back to them. Brevity. Okay. That's the B. And then now they've got, if they've got any sort of reasons something they have to tell you, they've got a local preference policy there, the certification. Okay. They're going to tell you that. Okay. If they don't tell you, it's not going to apply to it. Okay. Knowing that going into it. Okay. Ex-offender, they're going to have some things, the General Assemblies are meeting right now. Ours just started here in Georgia. When they get together, they go crazy sometimes. I've lobbied for 10 years and I've seen it in action, and they have to do something, because a lot of times they just sit around and they do nothing. So they start passing laws like this. And so you'll see sometimes unusual laws that you have to respond to, and you think, my goodness, you got to respond to it. Okay, go ahead. And so when you're working in Michigan, go ahead and have this. This is probably going to be something common for every contract you work with in Michigan. If you work in Georgia, you're going to have you have to declare you're not a communist. You're going to have to declare that you have your save affidavit and you have your e-verify. Okay, these are things that you're going to have in place. Sometimes they are, like those here, it's not required that it's got a notary. Occasionally it is. Give yourself enough time to get those things notarized, okay? And understanding you. So if you're working on a weekend, Sunday's trying to get something done for a Monday, not a good idea, because you're going to have to get those notarized documents and you're going to run out of time. Okay. So have those ready to go, know which ones you have. And almost all of them you're going to have a fresh. So one you did before, you're not going to do for this one here. Okay. And here they have information about a tax ID number, and they're setting you up in their accounts payable system. You probably have already went and signed up with SAM, the System for Award Management. That's only applies to the federal government. State and local governments are going to do their own methods. This is basically SAM in short, abbreviated version. Okay, they're getting you ready to be able to pay you. So make sure you got the information accurate and ready to go. And then they're going to tell you how they want you to respond to them. Okay, how you can mail it or you can deliver it. They're going to tell you, and you can't violate that policy. And if you got a question, they're going to tell you who you can ask. Okay, when you can call. Don't ask a lot of questions if you don't have to. Don't ask any question if you don't have to. Okay, it should all be straightforward. And if somebody's going to have the question, they're probably going to ask it. And this is one of those things where you just don't really want to ask a lot of questions. Just know that going into it, and it serve your purpose. If they don't spell out something, it doesn't apply. They'll issue an addendum. Okay, they'll get it clarified beforehand, or they'll cancel. Okay, and information, if there's insurance, some of these things you may have, may not have. If you don't have it, you need to tell them you don't have it. Never leave anything unspoken to. But if you can, in this case here, you say yes, they can get it within 10 days. Okay, go ahead and call your insurance person. Say that I'm bidding on this. I need basically a pre-clearance letter, and say that I can get this within 10 days. Back it up. Okay, and they'll always do that for you. But don't cut that check until you need to. Okay. That doesn't make any lot of sense in doing that. It's $1 million policy. I know if you have a $500,000 policy now, that's good. Wait until you get the contract, then get $1 million. Okay, have that ready to go. That's costly. The scope of work is always very clear. Okay, these are going to be key indicators too that you might start looking for. Indicators of success, the ones that you can help determine how you're going to bid on a project. Maybe what I do is when I work, I traditionally work with governments with about maybe 50 employees to maybe 250 employees. If I get above that, it's not really, I'm not going to win. I'm going to waste my time. I'm not going to probably not going to do a great job with it. Okay, so I'm going to just shy away from it. So if this is an indicator right here that I wasn't willing to work with, maybe I only work with up to 25 million, then I'm just going to walk away from it. Okay, but if I can meet it, and I'm going to know, I'm going to start measuring myself how all the $38 million contracts I bid on. With this particular measurement, how many of those do I actually win? Okay, and they're going to start gauging you in the future as you become more successful in your business. The scope of work and how they're going to lay it out. Okay, they're going to speak to that. This is all they want. It's all they're asking for. Okay, don't go in there and give them a bunch of other things that they don't need and they don't want. Okay, here's an alternative. They also are asking about something else, but it's an alternative. And so if you want to bid on it, you bid that as an addendum. Okay, and they will explain that to you. You can see those occasionally, but what you're bidding on and what you're responding to is this scope of work. That's it. Okay, and if they tell me 10 city meetings, I might even my price points. I might come back and say it's $1,000 per meeting. Okay, so I'm going to start looking for those indicators of how I'm going to actually bid out the contract period, knowing that this is a multi-year contract. That makes it more appealing to a lot of individuals. Okay, and you can pretty much count on it. Okay, if it's a 3 year, it's a 3 year. Okay. And probably even potentially 6 year. Okay. And see, it says there are 2, so a total of 3 years there, but it could eventually be longer. I know that going into it. You also might want to, nowadays, you might want to go ahead and have some sort escalating price if something happens. Almost always, though, that can be done in a negotiated stage. I wouldn't just throw that out there right now if they're not speaking to that, but be prepared to answer that question. I'm seeing that more and more these days. What requirements they have, okay? And it just be simply, it says here, must have at least 5 years of clients with federal grants. If you have only 3 years, don't walk away from the contract, okay? It's just one item. And you can maybe spell it in different ways. Maybe you've got 5 years total in multiple companies or something. Spin it the right way. Learn how to respond back to them. It is at this point, if you only have 3 years, then you potentially are going to be discounted. So you need to, have more experience. Help them in other ways. Almost always, when you're in a non-competitive environment, this is more important. Maybe I said that wrong, but there's a bunch of people bidding on it, then this is more important. If nowadays are having a hard time getting anybody to respond, largest spending period in American history. I've never seen a year start off like we've seen this year start off in terms of the number of contracts that are out there. So know that going into it, they're going to have a hard time getting you individual respond. Some of these they'll step back from. Okay, so don't just walk away from it automatically. And then they're going to lay out how they want the proposal requirement, your cover letter, your experience, your key personnel. Ms. Bailey Fultz, Ms. Tammy, she helps you really understand how to do this and how to lay it out, how to write that. I encourage you to take that class. Here's that evaluation criteria. Okay, look at there. Experience is 90 points. So that's important. Experience of key personnel, 90 points. So 2 is 180 points. Right away, looks like it's more than half. Is about experience. Okay, they want to know that you're qualified. And why? I told you earlier, the reason why is they don't want to be embarrassed. They want to know that they've got somebody that they can count on. Okay, and that the next one is that you understand what they're asking for, and your approach to it is explaining. And then your location of your office, they want you kind of close, but it's actually equal to the price. Okay, so the first one I pulled out at random, they want to know you're qualified and that you're close so they can get answers whenever they get questions. Okay. And then they'll let the elected officials worry about how to pay for it. Okay. Because that's what they want. I'm kidding a little bit, but price is the last determinative factor there. Okay. How they're going to pay you. And that becomes important to you. Okay. But almost always can be negotiated when you get in there. Okay. Selection criteria is there. And they explain how they're going to go about it and how they're going to tell you. Most oftentimes, they're not going to tell you if you lose. Okay, they're going to tell you if you win. So if you didn't win, you got to find out by yourself generally. Okay, the ways to find out: you can watch the meetings, the agendas for Kalamazoo if you were bidding on this one, and they're going to talk about it in a public setting. They're going to announce the award, and you're going to see who won it, and probably go see their proposal as well. How to make any changes? These are all the other things, the minor things you need to worry about. If there are any questions, this is really almost near the end, but if you got them, you can only respond to this particular individual. Don't find yourself being disqualified because you choose to go outside those individuals. Don't call the mayor. Don't call the city council. Okay, that gets you disqualified. And then here's the actual contract there, details, and so that's what we're looking at. Nothing too complicated. Okay, it may look enough. Let's see how many pages do we have there. About 20 pages. It could scare away some, but it's not anything too complicated. So knowing that going into it, if you do this kind of business, a great opportunity, great city, great place to work, fair project. And that's how RFPs work out there. And so I had other ones I can talk to you. I always like to use a more recent one and ones out there today. But remember, going into the work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Okay, they're going to have some addendums. They're going to make some changes. If they say they want responses back by the end of the month, look for them to potentially even expand that time. Okay, they have that ability to do that. So don't just fill it out the first day you see it and then send it back and you got 20 days to wait. That's not a good approach. Okay, if you only have 5 days to respond, then take those 4 days. Get it done. Okay, and you could get something. You have all the information ready to go. You can get a response back in a day if you need to. Okay, they will work with you on those processes. But just know you're going to take all the time that you need that's available. Just tips: always read the entire proposal when you first get it. Okay, pay attention to the areas, those processes we discussed. I always set them aside, think about it, make sure it's the right one, make sure it's a good fit. If I have colleagues involved with it, I want to make sure they agree before I ever sit down to complete the proposal. Okay, so know that going in. And another one of my all-time favorite quotes is, the only source of knowledge is experience. Okay, so you got to do things, got to respond, you got to learn from it. It took me probably a good year before I actually won my very first contract. I was doing it on the side, so it was important. It's hard to break into it. Okay, just know that going into it, but you can eventually. Okay, every field's different. I was 30 years younger too, so it's a little bit different. But now I can get a response back, and it's because I've got that experience under my belt. Okay, that's Albert Einstein. And with that said, you can come to our Rfp writing class. It's on the 1st and 3rd Thursday. The next one's January 20th. This is with Miss Tammy. If you are currently a subscriber, you can come this at no charge. If you're a member of our services. If you're not at our My State or above, there's a cost of $75 for that. This class is limited to 10 classes. Every one of them fills up. Okay, so if you are interested, you can click the purchase the spot for that. But I do encourage you to learn how to do that. Today's session, the focus was how to the structure of an RFP. We walked through each section. I went and tried to explain the importance, and I used an actual RFP as an example to help you identify each section. Although the sections weren't in my example, wasn't exactly laid out as that as a presented in the RFP, it was still there. All those parts are there, just in a different format. And you will find that over and over with all governments. And so with that, here at Gov School, I want to stop, see if you have any questions, and I will try to answer those questions. And also at this point, we actually stopped going live on our YouTube. And so if you